that. Everybody's up and running. I was running. Jenny. All right. Let's see here. I'm going to wait for an audio check. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Should be on here. There we go. Everybody is up to speed now. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. All right. Wow, Wednesday, and I've got everything going together at 11 o'clock, and I am live. That is crazy. Not as crazy as this phlegmy stuff in my throat this morning, which I can't seem to get rid of, even though I'm pounding coffee to try to loosen things up. That's my philosophy. Coffee makes everything better. So, especially when you drink out of your big dog cup, which says, I like big mutts, and I cannot lie. So you got to drink out of your big dog cup. And this is a weird base. All right, what is today? Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And I hope everybody's doing well. And that you're having a productive week, if that's your goal. To be productive. If your goal is to be lazy and do nothing, I hope you're accomplishing that. Because everybody needs a little lazy in their life sometimes too. Now, not everybody can pull that off. Some people just have to be doing stuff all the time. I'm not one of those people, but I know them. I know those people. My dad's one of those people. He just can't like chill very long. It's like he's not an ADD person or ADHD, but he's just one of those that works and works and works, even though he's been retired for 25 years or something like that. He's always working. So he's just one of those people. I did not inherit that gene from him. So when I want to be lazy, I can be lazy, but I can also be productive when I need to be and work when I want to work. And yesterday was one of those days. I did some work yesterday. Because sometimes there's just stuff that needs to be done, and it's not stuff I want to do on camera with you guys because it's boring as all get out. I mean, it really, really is boring. And to kind of show that off, this is what I was doing. Oh, I moved my little thing here. So this is what I was doing yesterday was I was putting finish on, well, not finish, I was staining. So I was staining all these bases. So this one actually turned out really pretty. That's really nice, right? This is oak. This is white oak, and I did a mahogany gel stain on this, and it turned out really nice. I don't think this camera's on. Let me turn this camera on. Turn on number 4 here. There we go. Number 4 is on now. So this is how that went, and you can see the engraving on the front looks really cool. This one had some really nice stuff. I like the mahogany gel coat on the white oak. For whatever reason, this is just kind of like my go-to color for white oak. I just like the way that it plays with the openness of the grain where it gets dark and you can really accentuate the grain patterns on here. If you look at the top, if you look here, you'll notice that I have those medullary rays running across the top, which is very indicative of quarter sawn white oak. Well, if you take flat sawn wood like this and then you cut it, you get quarter sawn up at the top, which is why you have these really narrow grain lines. That's the quarter sawn, but then you get these medullary rays, which is very telltale of a white oak kind of thing. So I did, how many did I do yesterday? I did 5. I stained 5 bases. Well, I didn't stain all of them. So this one right here, oh, reach way over there, is walnut. And this one got a dousing of, what did I put on here? Danish oil, dark walnut Danish oil. Because the dark walnut Danish oil has pigment, but the oil itself really brings out, this is figure in here. This isn't like a blotch or anything. That's just really cool figure in this. And then if you recall, if you were here the other day, I told you how I actually taped this off and painted this black to make sure that that carving stood out once this was done. But this turned out really pretty. So I've got this one done, so you can see there's another view of this one. All right, so that looks nice. And I usually just take the tops and lean them in, and that way they can kind of air dry all around. So I've got all of these things sitting on little stands. This was a different one. So this is one of the hickory. This stuff is just a mystery to me. I don't know what to think of this stuff. This one was mostly heartwood, which is the darker wood. And then you can see up in here, like in this lid, you can see that, there we go. So you see all this strip of white or lighter colored wood in here? That is the sapwood. And this stuff has a lot of that stuff running through it. So I mostly got heartwood, and I got this really kind of cool streak of sapwood right here, and it kind of matches this board across the top. And so that looked pretty good. So I stained this with, what was this called? Mocha. And it's the first time I'm using this stain. This is a Czar stain, but it's like a one coat interior oil-based stain for like wood and such. So I did that. So that's that hickory base. This hickory base, now on the inside, this one looks like garbage on the inside. And it's not because of like what I did, it's just the wood is really weird and has a lot of, like if you look at the inside, it looks like I just slopped stain and had big stain marks and stuff. That's actually in the wood grain itself. So all these like dark marks like right over here and stuff, that's all in the wood grain. Like over here, it looks like, oh my God, what did you do? Why didn't you put stain or wipe it off or whatever? Like all this stuff over like right here. Look at that dark area right there. That's actually the wood grain. So all those little marks are the wood grain. Now, if you look at the outside of this base, it's like this would be the front. It's really pretty, right? And you can see where it's got this streak right here of the darker wood down at the bottom, which is the heartwood, and then the sapwood at the top. And I think this looks really pretty. This has another one of those kind of bases that has a mix of both woods in it. And I think it looks really nice, but like the inside just looks really weird and crazy. But that's the kind of thing with this, with the hickory, and like you can see on the back here too, it actually has some marks and stuff like right up and through here. All these marks and things that are on here, there's one like over here, and then the little streak going down. All this stuff is indicative of hickory and the way it looks. Hickory is a very rustic looking wood. That's the best way I could put it, is it's rustic looking. But I think it looks kind of cool. Like I said, I don't know that I will ever use hickory again. Okay, I'm gonna eat my words there because I'm getting ready to do a project maybe later today where we're actually going to take some leftover hickory and turn it into another base. So I am going to work with hickory one more time, but it's kind of a continuation of this effort. But down the road, I don't know that I'll ever use hickory again, unless it's for some sort of a different project. I know that hickory gets used a lot for things like stair runners and things like that, because it's a super tough wood. It holds up to wear and tear and things like that. It's very hard, but it also just, I don't like working with it. It's just, you know, if I'm going to be making things, I don't want to have to struggle with I mean, it's already hard enough making these and making them look nice, but to have the materials fight back against me is not something that I enjoy. I don't like the struggle. Some people do. I don't. I don't like the struggle. So probably not going to be working with that again. Now, things like white oak and even red oak, but more so white oak, very hard, a very, very hard wood. I also have a smaller white oak base that I did that's kind of off camera over there, that I finished as well. It's very hard wood, but it's actually pretty easy to work with. I enjoy working with the white oak. It's not that much of a problem. Same thing goes with walnut and with maple. There are some woods that have a hard janka characteristic to them, but are not difficult to work with. They cut really well, they sand really well, things like that. That is not the case for that stuff. That stuff is just, the hickory is difficult all the way around. It's hard to, it doesn't chip out very much, but it's really hard on tools. It's hard on cutting blades. It takes forever to sand because it is such a hard wood. And it's an open pore wood. There's a lot of things in my book that go against it, but I can understand why there's reasons people like to use hickory. But I think in my instance, I'm going to say that hickory has had its run and it will be retired after I finish this next project, because like I said, I've got some leftover pieces that I need to use. I'm not going to just, I've got good wood, I'm not going to throw it in the scrap bin, right? So I've got good wood that needs to be used, but you know, oh look, I can be famous on TikTok because Ninth Glue On said he can get me big followers. That's awesome, except you're a douchebag. So I'm gonna ban you. And I just banned somebody. There you go. You're banned. You know, they're just bots. They're just little robots that go in and try to get you to click on their stuff. And I don't care if I'm Twitch famous, because I'm here as a service to you. Not really. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so yeah, it's pretty much run its course in my shop. I will continue to try different woods. I enjoy using different species of woods. The hickory was a suggestion from one of my customers. They're like, "Oh, do you ever use hickory? I love hickory." And I'm like, "No, I've never used hickory." Sure, why not? Let's get some hickory. I've done hickory now. I don't need to use it anymore. But I do have different species of wood that I like to experiment with, and I like trying different things that I haven't used before. That's how I found like sapele. Sapele is, I love working with sapele. It's a little bit difficult sometimes, not from like a cutting standpoint or anything. It's not super hard on the tools, but from a finishing standpoint, or where it can be a little splintery, I guess is the thing. So you have to be careful with it, but I enjoy working with that. I've got, what else do I have? I have some other types of wood here too that I've purchased. Of course, cherry is my main go-to. Mahogany is wonderful. I don't know what else I've got over there. I've used some sycamore, which is fun. Quarter-sawn sycamore is really interesting and does some really cool effects and stuff. So I've done some sycamore. So that's when I go to my wood dealer, which I think I need to go there tomorrow because I need some really thick, like 8-quarter walnut. I shudder at the thought of buying 8-quarter walnut because it's gonna be really expensive, but I need it for my cherry table to make my dreams come true, because I have a vision. But anyway, it's gonna be really expensive. But when I go to my wood dealer, sometimes it's just I'll wander through and look, and I especially kind of have to watch myself as I wander through the exotic woods because they're so expensive. And I don't necessarily know that they'll work out in my favor when I buy them, but they look so cool that sometimes I can't resist. And so I like trying new woods, but I also have my standard go-tos that, you know, they're just always tried and true and they work every time. And that's like cherry is one of those. Cherry is just, I won't call it bomb-proof, but cherry is very reliable. I know how it cuts, it sands, it finishes. So all those things. Thank you for Verizon for telling me my bill's here. All those things make cherry a joy for me to work with, and I think that's why a lot of people like working with cherry. Cherry is just one of those really agreeable woods. Maple is one of those ones. I don't make bases out of maple just because of the color situation on maple. Maple needs to be stained, like dye stained, to get color into it. You can't use a regular wiping stain like a oil-based or stain on it. It's too blonde, and it's such a closed pore wood that you put it on and you wipe it off and it basically gets like a 3% darker tint to it. It's really not great. That being said, you can use dye stains on it. It's more difficult to work with dye stains when you're talking about intricate things like inside of bases and stuff like that. You really don't want to get into that. And you got to keep the dye stains even, and then you need to sand the wood off. And so typically I like to use maple on things like guitar bodies and such, because it's nice big flat surfaces. You can work on them, sand them down, you stain them, you sand them back, you stain them, you sand them back. So to me, it's much easier if I'm working with a large piece of flat wood to use maple, because I can control my finishing process on there. So this is the dye stain that I would use. Like, this is a trans tint dye, and it's pretty simple to work with. Actually, I'm gonna use that on this handle right here, because I want to accentuate, pop the figure in this thing, because it's super figured. So I want to pop the figure on there. So we're going to do that before we actually do the glue up on here. We're gonna do that. I'm gonna do it in alcohol so it doesn't take too long for it to flash dry. In fact, I might do that before I actually do the assembly on here. Well, I will do it before I do the assembly, but I might do that first, and then as we're cutting the head down, we will let that dry, and it'll be ready to sand and such before we put it back into the head of the mallet here. So, but anyway, kind of a big ranting thing there. I need space to work, so I'm going to move these projects off to the side, because they definitely need to be. So if you'll excuse me for a moment, I have to step off camera, and I'm going to move these over, because basically what's going on is that they have been stained, but I can't finish them yet. I can't put any lacquer or anything on them yet, because that stain needs to cure. And if you've watched my stuff, you know that I let stuff cure for a really long time, because I want it to be finished. I don't want it to be messed up when I get ready to put the lacquer on. I don't want to have any side issues with it. So I let things cure for quite a while, like this dye stain, or not the dye stain, but the gel stain, usually about a week before I touch that stuff. Because even though it's dry to the, like this is dry to the touch right now, I can touch this all I want and there's no color coming off on me. But before I go and put anything on there, I want to make sure that it has done its due diligence and dried off. I want to put this on here. I'm going to take the, so hang on, if you'll hang with me just a second here. I'm just trying to set these off to the side in a location where they will not be in the way, but have lots of air circulating around so they can dry off. Okay, painter's pyramids, don't need those. So what else is going on before we get to Mr. Mallet here? I went ahead and pulled this last time you saw this. This was in clamps. I clamped the heads down here, and I don't know if you can see this, but the opening here on the bottom is more narrow than the opening at the top. This is wider, and that is to allow this handle to go up inside like this, and you can see that there's space in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut some wedges to go inside of those two middle slots. I have a piece of walnut right here, which is the exact thickness of this handle right here. And we're going to cut those walnut wedges to go inside there, and then they will spread out, this is a wedge shape. So when they spread out, that'll hold this tight. We'll put some glue on them and such as well. But anyway, so pretty much then we just have to finish off the head and stuff. But before we get to that, what I want to do is, let's go to camera number 2. Yeah, that's camera number 2. What I want to do is I want to put some stain, some dye stain on this this handle right here. And the reason I want to do that is, like I said, it pops the figure. So you can see that figure on here. It's pretty nice, right? Let me zoom out just a little bit. That's a little tight. Just a little wider. Boop, there we go. Kind of bring you up just a hair. Okay, that looks good. And I've got this, I'm going to use this again, so I'm not messing with that. But anyway, ooh, I'm going to need more gloves. I am almost out of gloves here. That is tragic. I will say if you're going to use dye stain, you definitely want to use gloves, because this stuff, well, it will stain your fingers. What do I want to do here? Actually, I've got this. This has some nails in the top. It's usually what I put my lids on while they're drying, but I can probably just kind of lean this up against something like that. There we go. That'll work, because I just need air to get to this. I'm going to use alcohol. You can use water or alcohol with these dye stains. The alcohol it gives you less working time to spread things around, but it dries faster. And since I'm not really going to be applying this as a top stain, like I'm not going to make this a color brown on top, I want the brown to go into the figure and it's going to be sanded off. So I don't need long working time. I just need to get it in there and then have it dry. So that's the difference usually between these two, is between the water and the alcohol. Also, alcohol does not raise your grain as opposed to water. So that's another benefit. All right, I'm going to turn my brightness way down on my camera. I don't know why my laptop is not going to sleep. Battery preferences. Hang on a second. Because it used to go to sleep. Now it's not going to sleep. And I'm like, it should kind of every now and then make me turn the display off after 15 minutes. Slightly dim the display while on battery power. Enable power nap. Well, I don't want it to be sleeping. Optimize video streaming while on battery. Optimize battery charging. So it should go to sleep in about 15 minutes. It's not doing that, and I'm not sure why. Perhaps because I'm watching live streams, and that's why? I don't know. Anyway, I did turn the brightness down, which will keep my battery from going dead on my laptop, because that way I can still see comments from everybody. All right. So I'm going to put my gloves on here, and then we're going to mix up a little bit of the oil here. I lost my paint can pry thing, and I'm very sad about that. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if it got pushed into the garbage can or something. I don't know, but I'm very sad because I use that thing all the time, and now I have to always go grab a big screwdriver when I want to pry lids off of things. So what I do need is paper towel. I'll give it a couple of paper towels. Yeah, I went through a lot of blue paper towels yesterday too, because that's pretty much, I put my stain on with a brush, but I wipe it off with these blue paper towels, and I went through a lot of blue paper towels. There are stacks of them on the floor because it's oils. I usually let my rags dry before I throw them away. I don't know if that's really necessary for some of these things, but all right, I'm going to get some alcohol, and I'm going to put a few drops of the trans tint in there. That's a lot of drops. That's okay. And then we need to find a little stirry stick. Just going to grab a little scrap, and we're just going to stir this up. You can see when I pull it out, that stick is getting stained there. That's what I want. Okay. Set that on the side. But the alcohol dries pretty quickly, so that's a benefit. Because like I said, all I'm doing is I'm putting this stuff in the wood fibers to get the color as a separator. So basically when I sand off, all the surface wood will be sanded, but that color will still remain in those fibers, and it will make the it'll make the figure just pop on this thing. So I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to rub this on here. And I mean, you can already see, you can see the wood undulations in there from the grain. It looks even better in person. Just going to say that. I don't really need to get it inside anywhere else. I just need it on the handle portion. I don't need to have it up inside of here necessarily. I'll put some, I can't even put it at the top because that's going to get trimmed off, so that doesn't really matter. I'll get some at the bottom here. And then what's going to happen is this is going to get oiled. Once I'm done, I'll put an oil finish on here. I'm not sure exactly which oil, probably a tung oil finish is what I will use. But you can see, look at see how that's, I mean, I could leave it like that. So if I wanted to do color, and this is how you can color maple, you can use these dye stains, and they actually dry a little differently than you see them when they're wet too. So they dry a little lighter. They look really dark when they're wet. They're not quite that dark when you're done. But if I wanted to have just color on here, I could do it this way. And this is the way that a lot of like figured guitar bodies and stuff are done this way. But what we're going to do is we're just going to set this over here. And we're going to leave that for the moment because we're going to let that dry. And I need to sand all of that off. What I just put on there is going to get sanded off. And what that does, and we can do this 2 or 3 times, and the more you do it, the more color you're leaving in the actual dark parts of the grain. So we can do it multiple times and get that done. Oh, hey, David Montez. Nice to see you in the stream, buddy. This is basically just maple. It's hard maple, but it's figured. And so it's highly figured. So you'll see it called tiger maple, things like that. It's just basically figure. But it was a really, really, really pretty piece of wood. I have the rest of it over here. So in its raw state, it just looks like this. Hang on a second. Very dusty. I took it from the most figured section of the wood, but you can see that this has a lot of figure in there. And I think I cut it off of this section. So down at this end, the figure gets more prominent as you go down the board. So I took the handle off of this section just because I wanted something really, really figured in the handle. And then, like I said, this is going to, so you can see now, so you can really see that figure on here with the color on it. But we're going to sand that off because I don't need all of that color on there. I just want the color in the grain because that makes it pop. What I need to do now, though, is I took these out of the clamps and I trimmed up. So I did this yesterday. I trimmed up this side and this side. I just took a little teeny bit off of each side just to get it nice and square and straight. So you can see that those look really good. Very nice and flat across here. But I have not done the ends, so the ends still are glued, and I need to trim these down a little bit. And I was kind of debating where to do that. I can do it with the table saw, or I can do it over at my chop saw. I think the table saw might be my best bet for this. Let's see what I can, let's look over here. Because I would have to run the blade up really, really, really stinking high. I don't know if I can get it that high. Let's see if we can get the blade up that high so I can get that clean up. Woo! We can. We can get it that high. All right. So if I come right here, and this is very flat, so should be nice and easy to push this through. This is set to 0. I was doing some test cuts to make test wedges for going into the handle, and I was doing that. I just had a nice square board and was cutting wedges on the table saw because I think that's probably the easiest way to get a controlled cut of a wedge. But this is really, really high. Okay, I think we can do that. Let's go ahead and while that's still drying, we'll go ahead and cut off, and I'm just going to trim these down. I'm not going to go crazy here. I just want to trim the edges to get them nice and flat and square. So let me see if I've got my dust collection needs to be hooked up here really quickly. So put that under the table here. And then, oh, my clamps are in the wrong way. All right. Maybe I can get this dust collection in here. I've got things in the way which make it difficult. There we go. Ouch. Can't get my arm behind there right now. Okay, so I have dust collection hooked up. Got power to the saw. Got my ear protection here. So let's go ahead and trim these up. And where's my, I just need my remote. Here we go. That needs a new board. So I'm gonna need a new board here because I kind of cut through this one. That's what happens when it's really stinking high. But nice clean edge there, nice clean edge here. This whole thing is gonna get chamfers run all across here, which is why I've got my chamfer bit still installed in the table. But for the most part, I just wanted to get this cleaned off here. And that was pretty good. And to keep it nice, and I want to keep it kind of equal here. I did a pretty good job. I think I got it pretty close. And I'm not worried about the little fuzzies here because like I said, I'm going to chamfer this whole thing all the way around it. So all the square edges on this mallet head are going to get chamfered down and they should look fine. Get this out of the way here. Get rid of the alcohol. Don't need that anymore. Let's see here. This is probably, I'm still wearing my gloves. This is dry. So what I'm going to do now is sand off. You can't see that. I'm going to sand this off right here. Make a new one. And I did make a new one. I was doing this Wednesday. I started this on, I started on Monday. And then I'm finishing it today. So that's the beauty of my live streams. If you want to go back and look, under my playlist for woodworking live streams. If you go back to last Monday, you'll see me actually starting this whole thing because I did it on the stream last week. That's why I do it and save these. So just because not everybody can watch all the time, but if you see something and you want to see me go back and do something, you can go back and check the live stream on YouTube and you can see it on there. Let's see, what do I want to sand this with? Probably want something a little bit more coarse than I've got on there. I've got some 320 on my little sander, but I think probably just hit it with something nice, like a 150 or something like that. So let me just find a 150. It's probably enough just to kind of clear the top fibers off. And then, there we go. So we're going to clear off the top fibers off of here and need my dust collector for my stuff here. All right, let's hook up the dust collection and we will plug in the sander. And then we're just going to quickly sand this off. It shouldn't take too long. And I'm just using my little small sander to do this. And I really should take my gloves off because they're just going to get dusty dirty. So, quick and easy way to do that. Ready? Just kind of lift up the corner and you blow some air in like a balloon. There you go. I used to wear a lot of rubber gloves at my old job, so you really needed to learn how to take them off in the least problematic way. All right. Need my ears again. All right, I'm just going to make a new one. Basically, what I'm going to do on that thing is I'm going to flip it over. I've already got a long section. Problem with the slide, it's like, oh, make a new one. I thought he meant a handle. So I just cut this off, but I have to find a piece of wood that is nice and straight and flat to put on here. Ouch, and doesn't leave giant splinters in my fingers. Because I need this to be square to the actual piece here, I gotta make sure I get a nice flat piece of wood. This is oak, and I had that milled up pretty flat, but I probably have some other pieces around here I could substitute that for, so I'll find something. In the meantime, I can just flip it over and use the other side. And you can see there are marks in here, so it was actually on this side at one point in time. I flipped it to get a new cut pattern in there, but no worries. Always more wood, right? All right, let's clean this off right here. Cool. So if you're watching on a different stream, like on Facebook or on Twitch, you're not seeing comments from David. So I wish I had a unified chat box so everybody could see comments. But anyway, yeah, I retired last year, and so this is what I do. I mean, I was doing woodworking before I retired, but David just retired, and he's looking forward to doing woodworking stuff, and that's kind of how I spend the majority of my time now, is making things in my shop, and it's really fun. It's addictive, and you build up a lot of stuff that you didn't ever think you needed, but once you start woodworking, you need it all. I'm going to clean this up a little bit more here. All right, so hopefully you can see. I'll hold this up and see. So it's a little darker in the figure, and this is what happens is as you sand, well, you can see here's a comparison. This is untreated at the top here, and then this is with the stuff sanded off. So it just shows up a little bit more. But once you put a top coat on this, it'll make that like super pop. So what I'm going to do is do this one more time because I want it to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to come back over to here and hit this with the stain one more time, and that will really make that figure pop. But let me get my gloves back on here, just because this stuff will truly stain your fingers. All right. So like, once again, this is just a Mission Brown Trans Tint stain in alcohol. Normally I like to work with my stain in water, but because basically what happens is if it's in water, you can push it around and you can add stain to areas and things like that. If this is your final color, you can work with it a lot easier with water, whereas the alcohol flashes off so quickly that it's hard to work with the actual color. But since all I care about is the color in the figure, that doesn't really matter to me. So get a little bit more on here, because all I care about is what's left behind, not what's on the surface. But every time we do this, it soaks in a little bit more and will give me a little bit more color in the figure for each time that I add it in, then sand it off, and then add it in a little bit more. You can keep doing this over and over and over again. It just depends on how accentuated that you want all those little figure curls to be. And like I said, I'm not doing up here on the tenon part because that's going to be inside the mallet head, so I don't really care. I guess I can just hit this again really quick like that. All right, so I'm going to let this dry once more. We're just going to set it up here, let that dry. I don't really need this anymore, but now I've got all this stain. It's like, what do I do with this? We'll figure that out. But I am going to move this over here because I want to go ahead and put a chamfer on this. I'm just going to shove this stuff down. I've got all this stuff in here and I need to get rid of it. I'm going to move this over here for the moment. And I'm going to get rid of this, which is just my piece of cardboard that I use for staining and such on my extension wing of my table. I mean, it's stained already with stuff, but I try to keep it sort of clean as I can. All right, put that trans tint away because I do not want that spilling anywhere. And these gloves are still good, so I'm going to save these. Let's get them off. And I will save these because I still have some more staining to do on my cherry bases. I haven't done those yet. All right, but what we do have here is I've got the chamfer head still installed in my base there, so you can see that right there. I actually think I want this to go, I'm going to raise it up, I think. But I'll take a light cut first on the edges. So let me bring this over here. And actually, hang on a second. I'm going to lower this saw blade down because it's just, that much saw blade sticking up in the air just kind of makes me nervous. So I'm just going to lower that below the table there. And we're going to make a lot of dust here. That is for certain. A lot of dust. And I'm just going to bring my dust hose up here. I have a dust collection thing I could put up here, but it's kind of big and bulky and in the way. So I'm not going to really worry about that right now. I'm just going to get these cut, get the 45s cut on here, just so we can kind of move on with our lives. So I'm just going to take my dust hose and put it up here. If you can see that. Go a little wider here. There you go. So here's the dust hose. Here's the chamfer. It's not a very big chamfer. So this is still set up with the same chamfer that I used to do the edges of the handle, which were not very big. I didn't want to do a round over. I wanted a chamfer. It just seemed like a little bit of a cleaner thing to me, but anyway. Well, the thing about I could make a stain container, but it actually is not that much stain, and that's why I use a little plastic cup, and it's alcohol, so it kind of, you know, you have to have a really good seal on there or it goes away. All right, so let's go ahead and just do a little light chamfer on here. This is a white side chamfer bit. It's a really large bit, which I really like. It's got a 1/2-inch shank, but I bought this for a different project, but it's going to work out well for this too. And it's really sharp. White side bits are really nice. So I'm going to, let's see, I need power for my router. And then we will be ready to do this. All right. I can plug my power cord in. And we'll turn on the dust collection. So I just want to kind of show the order I'm going in. So I always cut the end grain section first. So that's what I did here. And the reason is sometimes when you're cutting that, you'll get, I don't know if you can see it enough, but there's a little bit of chip out on this end grain section. So by cutting this first, that little bit of chip out will get cleaned up as I do the long grain section. So that's why when I'm doing like a perimeter cut around an entire piece of wood, like if I was going to do across this piece of wood, the grain's going this way. So I would start here, then go long grain, end grain, and long grain. Those two long grain cuts clean up any split out, hopefully, that you get from that, from cutting across the end grain. So hopefully that makes sense. Spam call. Okay, so this is the, oh, I forgot a chamfer right here. I gotta do this one. Hang on just a second. Missed a side. All right, so this is the chamfer that I just put on here. Get a little closer so you can see that. I don't know if I want to, I think I want a bigger chamfer on here. I don't know. What do you think? Should I go a little bit larger with the chamfer? I'm thinking I should, just a tiny bit more. I don't know. I think I'm going to go just a little taller just to make it a little bit more pronounced. Let me just bring this up just a little bit. So let's go up just a hair. That's good. Not much, just a little bit. I think I'm going to do the edges here first, and then I'll do the flat sides, because these are a little bit more challenging. But anyway, let's give this another shot here. Okay, I think I like that better. So I went a little bit bigger on that chamfer all the way around there, and I do like the way that fits. Kind of fits the bigness of this. I know that's a really stupid way of saying it, but I do like the way it looks. And then this will all get sanded down as well. But I mean, it's a mallet. It's going to get whacked and abused. So it doesn't have to be beautiful, but I'd like it to start that way, right? Okay, so coming back over to where we were with this, you can see this is really dark now, right? So it's very dark, but we're gonna, once again, we're gonna sand that top layer off and just leave behind the dark in the grain. And like I said, you can do that multiple times. I think 2 is good for me. I just want that to kind of pop when I put some finish on there. And when you put an oil finish on figured maple, it really does make that figure really kind of pop out at you. One of the best things to put on here is shellac. Shellac makes this stuff look amazing. I'm not going to shellac this though, because it's not a great tool handle. I'd rather have an oil that soaks in And I think if I use like a tung oil finish, it has a little varnish in there, which is enough protection, and I can always just reapply it later. One of my favorite finishes to use on tool handles is like this one right here, was just boiled linseed oil. That's all this was. And when it gets a little worn down or whatever, I just throw some more blow on there and move on. So it's really easy to maintain and makes things look really nice. All right, so let's go ahead and clean this off. Let me hook up my dust collection again, just so I'm not breathing in all this maple dust. And I think we're still plugged in here. All right, I got to put the ears back on. So I'm just going to sand this off one more time, and then I'll probably move to a more fine sandpaper just to kind of get this in a finished state. Because at the end of the day, when I put this in the handle and finish things up, I don't want this to, it's difficult to try to sand some of these parts if it's already assembled. So I'm going to try to do a lot of the sanding on the handle before we actually do the assembly. And I still have to cut my wedges too, so that's to come. Did I not have this plugged in? Oh, I switched plugs. My bad. My bad. All right. It's the issues of only having one power outlet to use. All right. All right, so hopefully you can see why I do this before I actually like put the handle in the mallet head and do all that stuff, because getting to these areas inside here would be next to impossible if this thing was already assembled, which, by the way, it looks like this. Cool, right? And I'm just gonna, I took the sandpaper out. I'm just gonna work some edges here a little bit, just to kind of clean up a couple of edges that didn't get cleaned up, and then kind of go over this. And then what I need to do is get a like a 220 out and hit it with the 220, and that will put a little bit more of a final finishings on this thing, a little final sanding. But I'm just trying to get some of these areas that I couldn't quite get the other sander to, and just kind of break some of these edges too, because when I use the 150, it kind of sharpens some of these edges a little bit, and I want them a little bit broken. But this leaves behind, like I said, just a little bit of color in that figure, and you can see the difference. So if you look up here where there's no color added, and then look down here, and you can definitely see how much has been left behind in this handle now. So lots of color left behind in there. That looks really good. And I'm gonna go grab a 220, and I think that will be enough for this. And let me just put a 220 on here. And then we'll get this cleaned up. And then once I get that, we're gonna go cut some wedges and see about getting this thing assembled here. Because I can and will put the finish on after the whole thing is glued up and assembled. Feels really nice. I'm just going to go back and hand sand just a little bit more with the 220 in the direction of the grain, just to kind of make sure that I'm getting out any scratches. But once again, this is a tool handle, so you know it's going to get abused. I just want it to start off life pretty, and then once I've got a picture of it, it can get abused all it needs to. So this is not for sale. Now, there are people who sell these, and they make beautiful, beautiful mallets and do a great job. That feels really nice. So the other thing I was going to do to this, so I've got this brass nipple here. It's basically a nipple. And what I was going to do was cut a piece of this. So I want to make a hole in the end, cut a piece in here, so this basically would have a nice large hole so I could hang this or do whatever. But I saw, who was it I saw did this? Blacktail Studios. So if you ever want to see some really beautiful tables, go to the Blacktail Studio channel. But he made a mallet very similar to this, put the big hole in there with a piece. He had brass pipe. I don't have brass pipe, but I did find this brass nipple which I think I can use. The only thing I need to do is I need to cut this. My son gone? Oh, he's off today. I need to cut this down so I have a piece that I could make a hole and then put it inside here. And what I would do is I would probably epoxy it in there. So I don't know if I want to do that or not. You know what? I had that planned. I'll save that for something else because I like the way this looks. I don't want to mess it up with anything else. I kind of dig this the way it is. It's super clean right now. So you know what? Let's just leave this as it is, and let's move on to the wedges. And I'll tell you how I kind of am figuring out the wedges that I need. Just checking my stuff here. So what I'm going to do is put this in. There's a couple of different ways you could do it. You could basically measure the total volume of these and the total area of this, subtract it out, divide it by 2, and that gives you how much space you need to fill in here, or the width. I mean, it's kind of difficult. So what I decided to do was I do like this, right? And then I take my, if I can find them, my little calipers right here. And I love my little calipers. And I'm going to set them to 0. They're zeroed out. So this is for measuring like outside, these 2 climbs here, but these are for measuring inside. And what I do is I measured how much space on one side. So this is very even right now. So I measure, well, how much space do I have between these two right now? Well, I've got 0.1625. So if I wanted to not forget anything, I'm going to write that down, 0.1625. Okay, then I can measure how much space is between my little open slots here, because there is an opening there. That's the kerf left behind by my bandsaw. So I can actually measure that width. I'm just going to measure this one too. So that's 0.8. Or 0.0, I'm sorry, 0.08. So 0.08. Okay, and I can add those together. 2, 8, 2, 14. So what I come up with is 0.2425. So what that tells me is that if I take a wedge that is basically 1/4 of an inch, right, and I take 2 of them, because that's just the space between, let me get over here. I measured how much void I have between here and here, and I added just a tiny bit to it. So at 1/4 of an inch, if I have 1/4 of an inch wedge that goes in here, and one that goes in here, it should spread this to the point where it fits firmly inside of here. So I'm going to get my wedges cut. Now to do that, I need to cut 1/4 of an inch wedge, or I need 1/4 of an inch in width at the top, right? So what I'm going to do is here's my block that I'm going to use to cut these. Is it kind of square? Kind of square. Looks square. Let me make sure this is square, because square helps. That's pretty square. That's pretty square. That's square. So this is a nice square block that I've got here. This block, I just measured it up. This block is all square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 1/4 of an inch on here. So I'm going to set my thing here to 0.25. Okay, so there's my 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just going to mark that on here. Use a nice clean side here. So 1/4 of an inch, just going to make a line on here. Actually, I'm going to get my other pencil, which is a little bit finer lead. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little protractor tool right here, right? And this actually has a little angle finder on here. So as my angle changes, I can line it up and figure out what the degree is of change here. And so what I can do is, well, this is kind of interesting. I needed to do this on this side. Of course I did. hang on. It works better if I have a nice clean edge there to do it with. So let me get another one here. Okay. Because what I'm trying to figure out is how much of an angle do I need to cut this at to get a wedge? Because right now it's not a wedge, right? It's just a, let's see here. How are you going to work here? So this goes in, no. Like this? Yeah. So small though. So I put that on the 0.25. I run this right to the edge, and it tells me that I need to cut this basically at an angle of 90. Well, I need to take 3 degrees off of 90. 2.5, 3 degrees? Yeah. So 3 degrees off. Let's go over here to the table saw, where I am currently needing to switch this board around because and of course I use those screws. Well, I think I can get by without doing this. All I need is the edge here. So I'm going to go ahead and work this over. I'm going to loosen the handle, and I'm going to take this over. Let's see, there's 1, 2, let's go 3 degrees right there. So this is now at a 3-degree angle to my blade. And so, well, I take that back. It's 87-degree angle to my blade. You know, I've got all these old paper towels. The nice thing about this this dye stain is that it's not combustible. So I can just shove these paper towels in here and it'll soak it all up, and then I can throw it in a garbage can. So I've got a piece of wood here that I used earlier. So this has a nice straight edge on here and a nice square edge here. And what I can do is measure over 1/4 of an inch, cut a wedge, and see how that works before I do it on my finished piece of wood, because, well, we don't want to mess up our finished piece of wood yet, right? Until we get these measurements all worked out. So I'm going to mark this 1/4 of an inch on here. And then we will see what we come up with on my wedge. So I'm going to put this on the outside edge of my saw blade. You need to get the saw turned up high. There we go. And then that line, we're going to go past that line right there on the edge. And I'm going to cut all the way through, and that blade should hit this corner right down here and give me a wedge. All things working out the way that they should. Let me go ahead and put the dust collection back in here because we need that. Oh, such a pain in the butt sometimes. I wish I had permanent dust collection hookups, but I do not. Sorrows of the small shop. All right. Check my position again. I'm going to run this through one time, cut a wedge, see what it looks like. So there's my wedge. So there's my wedge right there. And if I want to cut another wedge, what I would do is set this back to 0. So I'm going to set this back to 0 or 90. It has a detente thing on there. And then I'm going to measure this out, my 1/4 of an inch on here. And then we will cut straight on here, and it should give me another one of those really nice wedges if we're doing it correctly. That's the nice thing about having a scrap piece of wood to do this with. All right. Okay, and what I'm left with are two wedges right here that are basically, if I put them side by side, they are pretty much equal. Now I can sand these down a little bit and get those tips really dialed in because I think I want them to be a little bit, it's not bad. But I would probably sand these down. But anyway, so what we would do with this is we would take our mallet, right? We would put one in this side like this, one in this side like this. And these need to be knocked down just a little bit. They're a little wide. So I would sand these down. But anyway, once we get them both in, then we could start driving them in like this. You start driving them home, it'll start separating these pieces of wood. You want to make sure that you're driving them in evenly because you want the wood to spread evenly and you want a nice even amount of wood between each of these pieces here. You don't want it being like super thick on this side and really thin wedge on this side. You want them to be equal when you're driving those home. All right, let's go ahead and cut this up. Let's do this. I think we're in good shape here. I'm going to cut them, I think lengthwise. What I did was I looked at how much length do I need. I've got basically this piece right here is just about as long as this, but it is taller than this piece. So driving down, it will be, even if they go all the way to the bottom, they'll still be above here, which means I can clean them off. So that's one thing I was looking at. And let's go ahead and change this to, probably ought to just use this as my board, right? Actually, I probably could. It's got some messed up areas here, but that's not too bad, actually. I could clean that up. Interesting. Interesting. I need a different bit. Hang on a second. I'm going to change that board out. And the reason I want to change the board out is that as the wedge pushes through without a support piece over here, the piece just sits right here. It doesn't push past the blade. It just stops and then it just wobbles next to the blade, and then it could catch and tear the piece up or whatever. If there's another piece of the board right here, it'll push that piece through to a point where it's not going to catch on that blade and go flying off and get chipped and damaged. So I might just actually change this piece out right here. And I need to change the bit here because these are square head bits or square head screws. So grab this. And let's just take these out. Okay, there's that piece off of there. I'm going to just use this board for right now because I know it's square and flat. This is all stuck to me. I need to get all the dust out of here, and that is enough space. And put this one in here. Not a permanent solution, but it's a solution for the moment. So we will use this as a temporary solution to my issue. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a cut. This is at 90 degrees. I'm going to make a cut so I can see where this needs to go through. Or should I do it at 3? I'm going to do it at 3 degrees. So I know where to line my piece up. So I'm going to loosen this. And I will just make a cut without the piece in there, just so I can see where it's going to pass through. Actually, I'm going to raise my blade up a little bit more. Okay. Really quickly. And that just gives me a reference point when I'm lining this thing up that I know where the blade's going to pass on there. That's the only reason I did it that way. All right. And lower this back down because it doesn't need to be that high. I'm going to mark 1/4 of an inch on here. I've got a really better tool for doing that with too. So hang on a second. If I can find it. I've got a much better tool for 1/4 of an inch marking, which is my little Craig multi-mark tool here. So I can set this up. So basically I'm just going to use the little pin that comes down, and I'm going to set the depth here and then lock it down. And now I can mark my 1/4 of an inch on here. Actually, I put it against the thing. There we go. And that gives me a much easier way to mark this. I'm going to bring it in here, and we are going to see that cut. Okay. I'm actually going to take this angle just a little bit. I want this to be right here. So let me change the angle just a little bit. There we go. That should give me a little bit thinner wedge here. That looks good. Okay. So this should give me a nice thin wedge. Is that straight? And my piece goes right there. All right. I don't like running my fingers really close to the saw, but we got to do it just this time. So now you can see this wedge, hopefully you can see that, this wedge is much thinner at this end right here. And that actually turned out really, really nice right there. So we're going to set this one aside. We're going to set this back to 0 or 90. And then we will clean off our mark here. We're going to get this marked off at 1/4 of an inch so I can line it up on the saw blade. And then put this on here, and we will cut this straight in through here, and that should give me about this exact same angle on this one. All right, let's do this. Nice. All right, well, did you see that? That's what happens. My wedge got wedged in there. That's why I used this and why I had my fingers set away from there. Dang, man, that was not great. That was not great. And it screwed up my wedge too, man. All right, well, we need to do this one more time. I'm going to set this wedge to the exact same things I did last time. And then we're going to cut another wedge here. That was scary at best. I'm not sure why it did that. So coming back in here, I'm going to mark my 1/4 inch because, you know, might get myself a paddle this time. And use a paddle on top of here. That doesn't seem right. That's not right. It should come to here. Come to right there. Hang on a second. Returning. This right there. There. That is not much of an angle, it doesn't seem like. All right. Let's be super smart. We're going to use this. We're going to hold it down with this. So let's get it lined up here. Right there. All right, let's try this one more time. All right, we now have another wedge. This one's a little thicker than this one. So I'm going to take this and hit it with some sandpaper. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All my fingers are still here, which is a good thing. Good thing. All my fingers still around. Where's the thick one? Right here. And I'm just going to get a piece of sandpaper. Like this is some flat 150 right here. And I'm just going to work this on the 150 just a little bit, just to kind of flatten this out just a hair. So, yeah, that's why, I mean, this stuff it's hard cutting. I mean, I could have done that over at the chop saw, but honestly, the results could have been about the same. I mean, when you're cutting really thin pieces of wood, that's when it gets really difficult to kind of really make sure that you're keeping a handle on how things are going. And I mean, I've got a 0 clearance and it's still wedged inside my 0 clearance there. So, you know, not great. I'm just working this edge down a little bit, getting this nice and flat. So when I start to pound this thing in here, now some people use wood glue, some people use epoxy. I don't like working with epoxy. It's kind of a pain, it's gross, it just gets all over everything. So I'm just gonna use simple wood glue for this and to pound these in. And I think that should be fine. Let me get this other one and just kind of had a little bit of a high edge, I think, on here on one. But I'm just gonna use wood glue and I'll put glue around the edges and I'll put glue on the little things here. You know, we'll squirt it in everywhere that we can. And that should be enough, because here's the thing, the wood glue doesn't need to work that hard because we've got that wedge, and when we get these things pushed out, the glue is just kind of like icing on the cake. The wedges should hold it in. So basically it's just to keep the wedges from sliding back out, I think, is our main goal here. So let's see what we've got here. These are pretty good. This one needs to come down quite a bit though, hang on. So we're just gonna work this on the sandpaper here. This is just 150, it's not super aggressive. But I do want to get these about even to each other, just so that when I drive them in, like I said, I want them to be evenly spaced out so that there's about as much wedge on each side. And it will look aesthetically much better that way. Okay, so my wedges are now in good shape here. This one's still a little thick right here at the wedgie point. I'm going to work it down just a little bit, just so it slides in a little bit easier. So I'm just flipping it over on each side just to kind of get it down to more of a point, more of a narrow gap there at the end, just to make it easier to slide in. All right. And hopefully my calculations are correct that this total distance on these things will be enough to make up for this. Where's my handle? Where's my handle? I don't see my handle. Where to put that? It's over here. So the other thing I can do is measure how long this distance is. If I squeeze these together, this is, hang on a second. Let me, without breaking these things, I'm just gonna get a clamp and clamp these closed just so I can measure the distance across them. There we go. And so this is, what do we got here? 1 5/16. And the distance of these are, what do we got? What is that? 7/16. So 1 5, and then the distance here is, yeah, so that's fine. We should have more than enough to close this thing up. Oh wait, I measured the wrong side. Duh. All right, 1 5/16 there plus. Yep, it'll be close. It'll be close, but I think we got it. But I'm worried. I'm a little worried. So now that I'm a little worried, I'm thinking, should I get a different piece of wood and try to make some other wedges with another piece of wood? Because that, it's pretty close. I probably should have gone a little bit more stout with those. Problem is, it's a specifically thick piece of wood, but you know what? I think we're okay. Because if I need to drive it a little further, I can always just shave a little bit off the top of this until it's all flushed up. So I'm thinking I'm good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and do this because you know what? What the hell? What the hell? Let's get this done. It's a shop tool. It's not a masterpiece. Yep, let's do it. We're going to get the glue. And it's going to be messy, so I need to at least put a piece of paper towel down here like this. And I've got my wedges, I've got my little mallet, my other mallet, and we can start putting some glue inside here. Is that cleaned out? Hang on a second. Need to clean a little bit of glue, squeeze out on the inside here. So I'm just going to get my we do not want glue squeeze out in here. That would inhibit this thing from closing cleanly. For the most part, it's pretty good. I don't think there's anything else in here I need to clean. That looks pretty good. Just get this side. Okay, so nice and clean in there. I'm going to put some glue in the inside here. Just going to use my finger. Maybe if I can get this open. There we go. And I'm just going to apply some glue on the inside of each side of the wedge and just spread that around a little bit. Not a ton. Not a ton of glue. Just want this. Once it's in there and wedge tight, that will hold. I think that's pretty good. Pretty good. Then we need to put some glue inside these slots here because we want the wedge to have something to hold it in place once it gets in there. Then I'll put a little bit on the top here so it can drive it down in there. That's pretty good. Let's do a little bit on this side. And it also lubricates it so that as we're driving it in, it's not super dry, trying to fit into this little hole right here. Oh. All right, so we've got glue inside the handle here. Put a little over on here just for giggles. Let's put some on the side here. This is not going to move. So we need to make sure we do this right. All right, point of no return. But I do want to make sure, hang on a second, that there's no glue around the bottom, because when I go to finish this thing, I don't want glue on the edge of anything here. The top I can sand off, but the bottom right here, I cannot. So I need to make sure when this gets inserted that any glue squeeze out is gone. So we're going to stick this inside here. Maybe. It's nice and tight with the glue. There we go. I'm going to clean off all this glue squeeze out as fast as I can here. There we go. All right, so this is inserted. And now it's time for the wedges. We're going to take these in, put these wedges in here, and we're going to start driving these down. We are pretty tight here, hang on. All right, we are wedged. I'm just making sure they're nice and tight now. But they're very evenly spaced. Let me give you so you can see that we've got nice even spacing between the wedges there. This is all going to get trimmed off. Once all that glue is dry, I'll come in with a flush trim bit and trim all that off, and then we'll sand it all down. But that worked out pretty well. You can see underneath the handle here. I mean, it's not a perfect fit in here. It's pretty darn close. I tried to get it really as close as I could. There's a little, right under here, there's a little gap right there. Like I wouldn't want to sell this with a gap in it, but because I'm not selling it, it doesn't really matter. Now I don't want glue on anything either. I've got glue all over my hand here, which is not helping. Keep getting glue on stuff. So we'll sand this again just really gently before we get going, just to make sure that I don't have any glue on here before I go to put any stain on here. But that pretty much is that. That looks pretty good. Feels really nice though. And you can see it's kind of nice balance, so not too much, but just enough to keep it up on the head if I want to, but it will tilt down as well. So the handle is like solidly wedged in there. It's not going to go anywhere. So once that cures up, and I don't even have to, I don't have to do anything else with this. Let me just make sure. This is down inside there as far as it'll go. And I'm going to give these another little whack. There we go. Yeah, my wedge up here started to split right at the top just because, you know, fracturing. But because I'm going to cut it off, and it is good right up there to the top. So any fracturing was up above the area where it's going to get cut off. So that turned out really well. All right. Just checking the window here, see if there's anybody on there who's got any questions or anything. Time is at 12:40. All right, so I've got some time to start working on my other project while this is glue drying. Is that a thing? While the glue is drying. And I'm just going to set this somewhere. Probably need to set it upright, but it doesn't matter. We'll set it right there. That looks pretty cool, right? Just put it right in front. You can't really see it. Anyway, look at that. Isn't that cool? That looks cool. All right. So my next project is to save some sideboards off of a screwed up base. Remember that I was talking about the hickory? Well, I got some hickory here. So this is my, show you what we're working with here. Here's where my mind flow is. So we've got this base right here. It's screwed up. It's the wrong size. I fixed this by cutting thin boards and making the sides thicker, which gave me the right size. But anyway, I cut into these boards thinking I could fix it one way, and I couldn't. So now I need to come up with a different way of not having to trash this entire thing, because these handles on the sides, this piece of wood right here is still good. And these handles all get cut on my CNC machine. So I don't want to have to redo that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make, if I can, I don't know if I have another piece of hickory though that I can, oh, we'll look and see. Anyway, so I've got this. This is a 301 base, and it is much more narrow than one of my other bases. So being much more narrow, I can basically salvage those sides out of there, cut some new long boards out of this bottom board here, and then have a base that you can use for a 301. These little pieces on the side are 7.5 inches. 7.5? No, I'm sorry, 7 3/8 inches. So in order for me to do this, I need to get these to 7 and, I'm kind of stupid here. 7 7/8. Oh, see, I wrote my dimensions down, but I didn't write down my actual cut dimensions here, which was kind of stupid of me. So if that's 7 7/8, is 7 7/8? Yep, 7 7/8. And then these little pieces right here are 1/4 of an inch. So you take a 1/2 inch off of 7 7/8. So basically 8 minus a 1/2 would be 7.5, minus an 1/8 would be 7 3/8. Is that what I said here? 7 3/8? Math is hard. 7 3/8. So the first thing we need to do, royal we, is to get these cut down to 7 3/8 inches wide. Now, I made some cuts on here already with the bandsaw, kind of screwing things up here, but I still have enough that I can actually cut these out and make them 7 3/8. So my plan is to cut these out of the base here, and I'm going to cut this one out of the base, and then I will cut them down to exactly 7 3/8. So I'm going to be very, very minimal cutting here. So let's see, do I have, yeah, so I need to cut these right there to there. That gives me plenty. All right, so I'm going to try to cut these down, and then I'll cut these pieces out, and that will give me 2 usable handles. And once we cut them down, I can cut the long pieces. We can do the mill ups on these, and then still have enough for do I have enough for a lid on here? Ooh, just enough for a lid on here too. That would be perfection. Wow. Okay. Woo. Okay. Well, let's see what we can do here. I think I have exactly enough wood to make this, well, do I? Yep, I have exactly enough wood to make this work. Exactly enough. And my life doesn't normally work out exactly, so I'm not going to try and argue with this. I am going to come over here to my bandsaw and try to cut these out. Let's go over here to the bandsaw, shall we? Let's get a little bandsaw action on the camera here. We'll zoom in, get some bandsaw views here. And then I got to figure out how I want to do this. So we'll come over to the bandsaw. I'm going to get my sliding square here because I want to set up my fence. So I need to cut this. I cut this one right here, which means, what does that mean? I have no idea what that means. I'm going to set my fence up. So let me grab my fence here. It's just a magnetic fence, which is actually, I love this thing. It's really, really useful. I'm going to try to set this up square here. That's what I want to do, is I want to see if this is square. There we go. Okay. So let me try to put the fence next to this. I'm going to lock down one side just to kind of give me a little bit of a steadiness. And I'm going to measure this. See how far it is from the blade. I'll lock that in. And then I'm going to just adjust this side so that it is hopefully about the same distance. I'm not going to push these in very far. I don't need to. All I need to do is trim them just a little bit. All right, let's see if that is enough to cut into here. Yep, and then I can do the same thing on this side. Cut in here. Okay, and my table saw has a blade that is probably too large to use with it. A 3/4 inch blade on there, which is probably the max on this saw, so it's really noisy. So anyway, we'll, I'm gonna, all right. Okay, so now what I need to do is I've got the cut marks in here. I need to now cut across and separate these pieces out from the parts that they're glued into. So I'm just going to push this thing all the way out here. Just going to loosen this up. I'm going to push this out. Because the thing is, I don't want to cut into the wood. I want to cut just outside of that joint where it's already been. I think that will work. I'm going to draw a line on here just so I can try to get a good measurement for setting this up. Try to find my pencil here that I used. Where's my pencil? There it is. Okay. So let's see here, because I want this on the outside. So right there is where this cut needs to go. And it can cut to the outside of that line. So that's what we're going to set that up now. This up to the outside. And I'm just going to lock this in so I can see how far. I know this is kind of like, all I'm trying to do is free this piece of wood from the base that it's currently glued into. And to do that, I need to make some cuts with the bandsaw here. So let's get this lined up and side lined up. And I'm just trying to get my fence squared up here a little bit so that I get pretty decent lineup on my cut here. Doesn't have to be perfect, but like I said, I don't want to cut the piece of wood that is the side piece. That would damage the wood. I just want to cut inside of that to cut this and free it from the rest of the base. All right, let's try. You know what? Okay, so this is what we're going for. So here's the piece right here. Don't mind these pieces, they're gonna get cut off. But there's plywood at the bottom here, and all this stuff's gonna get routed out again anyway when I do this thing. But this is what I was after, was this piece of wood right here. And I did not want to scratch up or cut into the face of it. I just wanted to free it up. So it's a really thin cut just outside of that edge to free it up from the plywood base. So you can see, if you look here, this is what we did, was we just cut it from the base there. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. I'm just going to run this through and do the exact same cut. Speed up. Okay, so that is not bad. Now I can probably take this over to my workbench, and what I will do is maybe I'll put a my bench stop up here and just use my plane to kind of flush up the backside of these. So I'm just going to put, let me get over here. I'm going to put my bench stop on here, right here. Move big old Mjolnir out of the way. So I got this up here. I'm just going to grab my it's right here. And I'm just trying to remove all of this stuff that keeps this from being flat. As this is sliding all over the place, I might have to actually lift up my table here. Ah, just knocked something over. No idea what I just knocked over. What did I just knock over? What? Knocked something off. No idea what it was. Just came crashing to the ground. Glue bottle, maybe? Maybe that's what it was. I can raise the middle of my table up just a little bit, and it gives me basically a stop. So when I'm planing across, it doesn't slide away from me. And all I'm trying to do is flush up these areas here. This needs to be the same way. It's this way. A lot of this is glue and wood, so it should clean up pretty easily here. There we go. And then the rest of this is plywood, so not really an issue. And then right here, a little bit more glue on this end. And this is pretty flat now. Okay, so basically working like this. Now, these are going to get cut down too, so I'm not really worried about it, but I do need a flat surface when I'm cutting this down. All of this is going to get removed. So all of this stuff in here, all this is actually going to get removed because if you look at my other table, it has the exact same type of inset for the bottom. So that'll get removed anyway. And it'll just get replaced with another piece of plywood. So my little rabbiting bit should cut all of this stuff out of there. All I need to do is make sure that I have a nice flat section that when I'm cutting these down, it's not gonna be offset a little bit because of a little bit of a higher piece of wood right here. So just making sure that it's nice and flat. And I cut these really close to the rest of the wood so that it should be pretty exact here. So it doesn't need to be perfect. Most of what I'm removing here is like glue. I can feel the glue on here. Let me come this way with it. And I need to get this all trimmed down here. There we go. Oh my gosh, it's stuck. There we go. I can tell when I hit the glue, it's like, breaks. Okay, that feels pretty good. That is very flush. Oh, look, that piece just popped off. That's even better. Okay, let's work it this way. Get it flat this side. Just a little bit of glue left on here. I'm not looking to change the thickness of this board, just looking to get these high spots cleared out so we can get them dimensioned to the size we need. Kind of like that. So now this is flat all the way across here, and for the most part. I don't know why this is. There we go. So this is flat, and like I said, all of this area right here is the plywood from the old bottom, and it's going to get cut in the exact same spot, and hopefully it will all be good. Now I need 7 3/8, so I'm going to have to cut these down, and I need to cut them equally because the handles are already cut on here. So I need to make sure that I'm cutting equally from the middle all the way to the edge. This piece is going to pop off. So what I can do is find the middle of this joint right here. And then from the middle of that, I can use, I've got a ruler that I can equally, like put a 0 point and it counts out equally this way. And so I can do equal amount on each side, find my mark, and then cut these down. So the first thing I want to do is get my calipers. Time is it? 1 o'clock. Yeah, we got plenty of time here. All right, so these are zeroed. So I'm going to figure out how wide this is. Okay, so that is 3.725 because nothing's ever like, equal. Let me get a calculator on here. Where's my calculator? Where's my calculator? Oh, stop it. Stop it. It's been so long since I've actually used my thing here. I don't know if I actually have a calculator on here. I think I do. Where's my calculator? Did I take it off? Of course I took it off of here. All right, well, we'll go into because you know what? I don't trust my own math. So 3.725 divided by 2. 1.8625, of course. 1.8625. And I'm just finding the halfway point. 1.8625. Wow, I found it. Amazing. And then I'm going to mark that halfway point on here. Let's do this. I'm just going to extend this line up. Don't worry, this is all going to get sanded down. I'm going to extend the line up here just so makes it easier to use. And then I can mark this line right here as my halfway point. Okay, so I have my halfway point on this, and I'm going to mark that all the way up. Hopefully keep that square. Okay, I've got my halfway line here. And this, keep it over here. This is a very cool ruler. It's from Woodpeckers. I know it's like, they make really expensive stuff, but I love this thing because it's a standard scale from 1 to 24 inches over here. But on this side, it's 1 to 12 inches starting in the middle, going 12 inches this way and this way. So that if I take this and I put it on the 0 mark, and I know exactly how much I need to take off of each side and mark it equally from my 0 point. So I got this for like making guitars, because a lot of times from guitars, you work off of a center line. And hang on a second, I gotta go grab something here. There we go. I need my phone because I have a fraction calculator that I want to use, because once again, math is hard. So we have, 1.8625. No, so I've got, what did I say? What was my total distance here? 7 3/8 is what we need, right? So 7 3/8, and we need to divide that by 2, is 3 11/16. So I need to go from that center line, I need to go 3 11/16 on each side. Now I could use like my calipers and just mark it on each side, but that's okay. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. So right here. And same thing on this side, 1, 2, 3, and 9, 10, 11. So there are my 2 marks based off that center line. And that will allow me to, oop, not that one. So we're going full woodpecker today. Because you know what? Accuracy counts, and I find these woodpecker tools to be pretty darn accurate. So I'm going to cut off that much, and we're going to do the same thing here. Actually, I'm going to use the bottom mark because all right. So now I have my mark here and over on here, and that is where these need to be trimmed. So I will do those over at the compound miter saw, and we're just going to repeat that on this one. So I need to find my my center line here. We're going to draw this line up. Take it from this side. It's a little easier. So we're going to draw this up here. And then I can find my center line by measuring over with my measurement that I already had here. Okay. Now I'm going to draw my center line up, and then we will use that center line for finding my 3 11/16. What I said, right? Oh, stop doing that. There. 3 11/16. So we're going to put the 0 mark on here again. So we got my 0 mark right there. That's why I love this thing. Because if you want things equally spaced from a center line, this is great. And it's called a center scale. It's got a standard scale and a center scale. 3 11/16 and 3 and there we go. All right. Now all I have to do is mark these, and we can cut these out on the chop saw. And then my side pieces will be done, and they already have the handles cut in them, so I don't have to go over to the CNC machine and do those, which is kind of nice. Okay. So we've got both of these done. Let me see if they match up. They do. Okay, and I'm just going to measure that line, which should be 3/8. There it is. 7 3/8. Now these are also going to need to be trimmed down because these bases are a little more shallow. So you can see this sticks up much higher than that by about 1/2 inch or so. So this is going to get cut down, but that's okay. We're in good shape here. Okay, let's go over to the chop saw and chop these things up, shall we? I'm going to move my dust collection over. I've got a whole floor full of stain rags that I probably can throw away now since I used them yesterday. They're probably dry enough to throw away without worried about them going poof. I mean, it probably wouldn't go poof anyway, but I do like to err on the side of caution when it comes to oily rags or oil stain rags. It's just the smart way of doing things. Okay. Oh, I need a little power. Would be good for my saw. And there we go. Okay, let's see. Get these lined up here. I'm going to use this edge. Maybe that's the way to go. It's nice and straight, flat. Just want to catch just inside of that line. Okay. I need my remote. Sorry about that. I love that saw, but dust collection is abysmal. It is horrible. All right, I'm just going to check my line here. Make sure that when I cut this, I am at 7 3/8 because this one is pretty critical. And I'm going to do it on the back because I'm flipping this over so I can use the same straight edge against the miter saw fence. So once I've already established where my lines need to be, then it's okay to do it this way. Because I know that they're going to be equal now. But I use this edge as my miter saw fence edge. And so I want to use the same. I don't want to put any skew into things by using this edge for one cut and this edge for another. That could skew it. So by using the exact same flat edge, at least I know that these cuts should be parallel to each other. All right. Man, this hickory just slows that blade down. I just hear it. All right, I'm going to measure this just to make sure. And it is just a little long, which is okay. I don't mind that because now I'm going to go trim that edge up just a hair. It's about a 32nd, but that's easy to do. That should be perfection. Nice. All right, so that's one. Where's the other one? I had two of these. Well, that's interesting. You've been watching. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. I set it down over here. All right, I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to cut one of these, flip it over, mark the other line, do my second cut, and we'll see what happens here. All right, just clean up the fuzz. It's a nice line. Let's check it here. That worked out really well. So we're just going to mark this one. Same thing. I will make the cut, and then we should have our two side pieces salvaged from the bad box. We can kind of make something new out of it, but kind of the same. I always like blow out as I'm using that thing just because it's so much dust thrown up there. All right. What's my son doing? He's sending me messages. What? Heading off to go vote. Oh, good for him. Good for you, son. Way to be civically minded. All right, 7 3/16. And these should be exactly the exact same, and they are, and that's wonderful. That's a wonderful thing, don't you know? All right, so these are now, and you can see I've got the handles basically, I'll go over here. So basically these handles are right in the middle of the piece of wood. The piece of wood has now been cut down to 7 3/8 wide, and we wanted to keep this centered so it didn't look stupid, right? So, so there you go. This part right here is now centered within these parts right here. And same on this one, same thing. So all very centered, looks really good. They are too tall. We can fix that on the table saw. Now, one thing we need to do, while we've got the miter saw already hooked up, is I can cut my pieces out on here that I'm going to need for the sideboards. And I'm going to get a measurement on those right now off of this. So we're going to measure that and see exactly how long. I've got my drawing here. So this should be 20 1/8 inches, which this is just a hair under that. So 20 1/8 inches is what I need. I'm going to have to square this edge up because this is still an edge from the shop when I got this. I'm going to see if this is square. That's pretty square, so I shouldn't, all I need to do is just shave the edge off of here so I can take a measurement. And that's what I'm going to do now, is just shave the edge off and get it squared up. So push this in just a hair because I need to make a measurement across the width of this thing. So I'm going to lock this down just to keep it here while I move the saw, because I had to put the saw into the free arm mode to allow it to move like this. Okay. Once again, you can't see me. All right, so I cleaned up this edge here, which is square to this edge. It does have a little bit of a thing right here where I actually screwed this down to a to my planing sled because I didn't want to make the boards not wide. But because I only need a board that's 2.5 inches on each side, I can take that out and cut this part out of the middle. That's no big deal, but I do need my 20 1/8 inches here. So let's grab this. We're going to mark our 20 1/8 inches, which is right here. And I've already got a line drawn there, but I think I kind of was doing some rough calculations when I was seeing if I could use this to salvage. So I'm going to get rid of that line so I don't confuse myself, because having two lines on your board next to each other and you only want one cut line can get confusing. So there we go. And interesting. All right. We're going to cut this off right there. I'm going to lose about 1/8 of an inch on the side. Don't know. Is that going to be big enough? I don't know. Oof. So close. So close. All right. Well, it's what it is. Let's make this happen. We're going to come back over here. My on this side this time. And we'll get this lined up. It's right there. Down. Okay, let's make a cut here. Worst dust collection ever. All right. I have now a board that should be 20 1/8 inches, and it is. Now thickness, this is actually thicker than it needs to be. So I'm going to have to plane this down to 3/4 of an inch. So do I want to plane a thick board, or do I want to plane thin boards? Do I want to do one board or two boards? That's kind of where I'm at right now. I could do one board or I could do two boards. Because right now this stuff is about, what, 7/8? Yeah, it's about 7/8. So I need to lose about 1/8 of an inch off of this thing in order to have it the correct thickness. And I'm a little trying to figure that out. I'll tell you what, because I've already got a little snipe right there, which I'm not crazy about. Tell you what, when I come back on Friday, we will go ahead and I will plane these down so that we have usable boards. Oh, let me take these off my head. So when we come back on Friday, we will have the boards to use. How's this looking? This looks really good. So what we will do on Friday, here's my Friday plan. Friday plan is I won't do anything else with this. We'll leave this until Friday, okay? I will come back and flush trim the head off of this thing, and then we will sand this up, because I haven't sanded this at all. So we will sand this all up, and we will put some tung oil finish on this and make it look awesome. So that won't take very long. A little sanding, a little tung oil finish. It'll look super cool and ready to go. But, ooh, is it balanced? Oh, my table's not very flat. But we got a little chip out there, maybe a little bit, not too bad. When we sand it, it'll look fine. But anyway, we'll do that on Friday because the glue still needs to dry. It'll be dry tomorrow, but I'll wait. Using a flush trim and cutting that off won't take very long. And we'll put some finish on, we'll sand it, put some finish on there. So that's one thing we'll do. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead tomorrow and tomorrow, maybe today. I'm going to get this down to 3/4 of an inch. I might put it in two boards. I might just do it in one board. But we're going to get it to 3/4 of an inch. And how flat are we? Because this thing might have lost flatness. No, it's pretty flat. That's actually very flat. So I've got a nice flat edge anyway. This isn't very flat. So we're going to flatten this board, this part of it. This is super flat right there. A little bit of light coming through here. It's just a little bit. Which means what I might do is split these, put them on the jointer, make sure they're super flat on one side, then send them through the planer, take the rest of the thickness off, get them to 3/4 of an inch. Anyway, when you come back on Friday, we'll have two usable boards. This actually is really cool. So you can't really see this, but I actually like this board because it actually has, this is like the tiger striping figure on here, right? You've seen that, right? We've looked at that enough today. I've got the same figure on here. So this actually has figure going through this whole part right here. I don't know if you can see it or not. I'm trying to bend it so that the light hits it so that you can see it. That's one of the cool things about figure is it changes with the angle that the light is hitting it. And I don't know if you can see some of that figure, but anyway, there's figure in here. So I think maybe if we hit this with like an oil finish or something, man, there's figure in this whole thing, which is really cool looking. I will probably end up, the only thing I don't like is it has these dark splotchy parts in here. Otherwise I would just use this light part, but not crazy about those. So we will use this part right here, which is kind of interesting. It has some character and has a lot of figure right through here. We'll use this as the front and this is the back. And then still has some little weird blotchy things. But I think some of these will actually be removed out of here at 2.5 inches. I'll probably lose, like anything up in here I'll lose. So that's not bad. Anyway, I think this will look interesting. I might have to try a different, maybe we'll do the same thing where we'll get the dye stain and we'll dye stain this thing, sand it down, dye stain it again, sand it down, get that figure to pop, and then we'll put a stain over top of it, like an oil-based stain, but hopefully that will kind of come through. Or maybe we'll just do like a, I don't know, maybe just an oil finish on there, maybe a tongue oil finish or something, just kind of keep it natural. That might look good too. So, couple options, we'll see. That's kind of way down the road. We're not even close to finishing yet. I need to get these cut down. This piece right here, I need to save this piece because I need a lid. And this is just going to fit. Like if I do this on the CNC machine, whew, that's close. It will just barely clear one of these. So I've got the pattern on here. I'm gonna have to put this, tape this down to my workbench. I'll only cut it down like maybe 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit 3/8 of an inch down, and let it cut off the design here, and then I'll free it up on the bandsaw. So this can stay nice and thick. I don't care if this is thick. This can't be that thick though, because for everything to work out correctly, dimension-wise, it needs to be down to 3/4 of an inch. Anyway, that's the plan. So we're going to finish this on Friday. We'll have boards to move forward so we can do joinery and such on Friday as well. So we'll do some joinery on this, and maybe I'll get this cut out as well, and that'll be kind of fun. So that doesn't look like it's the right size though. That's way too big on that one. Anyway, I'm going to check. I've got a couple of these other 301 bases. I'm just going to double check. If this is not the right size, I might have to, I don't know what I'm going to do. Actually, what I might could do, I've got this, right? It's got carving on here, but that's okay. I don't need that whole piece. I've got this piece right here. Oh, and it's not wide enough. So I might have to glue up, I might have to do a glue up on here to get a piece large enough to do this. It's not wide enough either. Damn it. Dumby Gumby. We'll figure something out. Don't you worry. We'll make this work. Doggone it. This is the scrounger base. We will scrounge up the pieces necessary to make this happen. And we might have to glue some boards to make them bigger, but we will make it happen. That's what I'm going to say. So anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it today. Lots of good things for us to do coming up. Royal us, royal we. I know. Hopefully you're here to watch me though. That'd be nice. And if you do come to watch, do me a favor. Just, you know, pop in, hit the comments, say hi. Be like Dave, David popped in and said hello over on YouTube, and I appreciate the company. And love having discussions about woodworking and tools and different things we're doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing and what you think I might be able to do differently, better. I'm open for discussion. I'm not the world's most knowledgeable woodworker. I just know what I know. So anyway, come join me next Friday. Hopefully and we will we'll continue this project. We'll finish up Thor's mighty hammer here, and we'll have some fun. We'll make it look pretty. How about that? All right. So you all take care. Have a great Wednesday. Get out in your shop. Have some fun. Do some good stuff. Let me get off that camera because that's even better. There we go. I'll try to have better camera discipline. And that's the problem with 4 cameras is you can switch between them all. It's like, oh my, this one, wait, this one. It's like, no, I've got lots of cameras, so I need to make sure I'm on the right one. But anyway, you all have a great rest of your day. Nice Thursday. Come back and see me on Friday, 11 o'clock, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. I'm everywhere. So hopefully I'll see you in one of those spots. Until then, take care.